Picture this: the dazzling lights of the 1917's disco era, the infectious melodies of ABBA filling stadiums, and the world watching as four Swedish musicians become pop royalty. Benny Andersson and Anni Frida Lyngstad, once a golden couple in both music and life, stood at the center of it all. But behind the sequins and harmonies, behind the perfectly choreographed performances and picture-perfect smiles, a storm was brewing. And behind the storm was brewing, for years, fans believed ABBA's split was simply a result of time, changing trends, and personal differences. But now, Andersson has broken his silence, revealing a side of Frida that fans never truly saw. A side that was complicated, turbulent, and at times, deeply destructive. Their love, their music, their friendship, everything unraveled in ways far darker than the world ever knew. But Frida's conflicts didn't end with Benny. Throughout her career, she had clashes, betrayals, and personal struggles that painted a far more dramatic picture than the carefully polished image of ABBA ever let on. At the heart of Frida's most painful feud was her relationship with Benny Andersson. Once deeply in love, they became ABBA's second power couple, their romance mirroring that of Björn Ulvaeus and Agnetha Fältskog. But unlike Björn and Agnetha, whose relationship was known for its emotional turbulence, Benny and Frida's breakup was filled with bitterness, resentment, and accusations that cut far deeper. When they first met in the late 1916s, Frida was a fiery, independent woman, ambitious and determined to make it in the music world. Benny, a musical genius with an ear for melody, saw her talent and charisma as an undeniable force. For years they built something together, a musical empire, and a partnership that seemed unbreakable. But beneath the surface, cracks were already forming. As ABBA's fame skyrocketed, so did the tensions behind closed doors. Benny, known for his methodical approach to music, often clashed with Frida's strong-willed, emotional nature. She was passionate and expressive, while he preferred control and structure. Their creative differences turned into personal frustrations, and soon, those frustrations boiled over. By the early 1918s, Benny's heart had wandered. Rumors of his infidelity began to circulate, and when the truth finally came out, Frida was devastated. She felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry, not just as a wife, but as an artist who had given everything to ABBA. Their relationship collapsed under the weight of broken trust and unresolved tensions, and by 1981, it was over. But the wounds didn't heal. Even after ABBA split, Frida and Benny's resentment lingered. She saw him as cold, detached, a man who had discarded their love as soon as he was done with it. He, in turn, struggled with Frida's unpredictable nature, her fiery temper, and her refusal to simply move on. You probably heard the whispers. Two beautiful women, one band, an inevitable rivalry. Fans and tabloids speculated for years that Frida and Agnetha had been locked in a silent war, a competition for the spotlight. At first, both women denied it. They called each other friends, sisters, partners in song, but behind closed doors, the truth was more complicated. Frida, with her dark, dramatic stage presence, her husky voice, her ability to command attention, often felt that she was overshadowed by Agnetha's blonde, ethereal beauty and her iconic soaring vocals. While Agnetha was seen as ABBA's golden girl, Frida was often viewed as the second voice, the supporting act, the one who had to fight for recognition. Tensions rose in the studio, on tour, and even in interviews. Who would sing lead? Whose face would be at the front of the album cover? These questions slowly created a divide between them, one that was never fully mended. By the time ABBA dissolved, Frida and Agnetha had grown distant. They rarely spoke, and while the world assumed their split was amicable, insiders knew better. For all the glamour and fame, Frida Lyngstad's life was not one of fairy tales and pop anthems. Behind the dazzling stage lights and soaring harmonies lay a woman haunted by shadows, betrayal, and grief that the world never truly saw. Picture this: a newborn child, innocent and unaware, yet already branded as an outcast. Frida Lyngstad was born into a world that did not want her. It was 1945, the end of World War II, and Norway was reeling from the trauma of Nazi occupation. Her mother, Anni Lyngstad, had fallen in love with Alfred Hasse, a German soldier. But when the war ended, women who had relationships with German officers were branded as traitors, humiliated, and shunned by their own people. Their children, known as Tysker Barnis, or German children, were treated even worse. They were seen as stains on Norwegian blood, reminders of an era no one wanted to remember. Frida never had a chance to know her father. Believing he had died in battle, her mother made the heartbreaking choice to flee to Sweden, seeking a fresh start, a chance to give her daughter a life free from shame. But the scars of that rejection followed Frida everywhere. Imagine growing up knowing that your very existence was considered a crime, that the country of your birth had disowned you, despised you, seen you as a mistake. Though Sweden gave her safety, it could never erase the trauma of being a child without a true homeland, a girl without a father, a woman forever searching for a place to belong. Years later, Frida learned the truth. Her father had survived the war. He was alive, a man who had built a life of his own, a life that did not include her. Their long-awaited reunion was awkward, distant, forced. There was no joyful embrace, no fairy tale ending, only unanswered questions and a relationship that never truly became what she had once dreamed of. The abandonment she felt as a child never fully left her. It would seep into her relationships, her music, her very sense of self. She was always looking for something: love, stability, belonging, but never quite finding it. For years, Frida had been cast as ABBA's fierce, independent warrior, the woman with the fiery red hair and sultry voice. But behind closed doors, even she was not immune to the painful contradictions of love. After the heartbreak of her failed relationship with Benny Andersson, Frida sought a new life, a new identity, and she found it in royalty. In 1992, she married Prince Heinrich Russo-Rus of Plauen, a German aristocrat. To the public, it was a fairy tale come to life. The ABBA queen had become a real-life princess, living in a Swiss castle, far from the chaos of the music industry. But, as with most fairy tales, the illusion masked a far darker truth. Behind the wealth and status, the marriage was anything but perfect. Prince Russo was powerful, respected, and deeply influential, but also controlling. Frida, who had spent her entire life fighting for freedom, for independence, for her own voice, suddenly found herself in a world of rigid expectations, suffocating traditions, and silent obedience. The very thing she had spent her life escaping, being controlled, being silenced, had come back in a different form. While she had longed for stability, she had traded one cage for another. And even as she tried to convince the world that she had found happiness, there were whispers of tension, of a woman torn between love and self-preservation. And then, just as she was beginning to find her footing in this unfamiliar world, tragedy struck. Fame, love, fortune, none of it could prepare a mother for the loss of a child. In 1998, Frida's worst nightmare became a reality. Her beloved daughter, Anni Lot, was killed in a devastating car accident. It was a loss that changed everything. The pain was unbearable, suffocating, unrelenting. Anni Lot had been her anchor, her reason to keep going after ABBA, after Benny, after everything, and now she was gone. Frida shut the world out. She withdrew from public life, disappearing into the shadows, isolating herself from the people who cared about her. She had already lost so much: her home, her marriage, her sense of identity, and now she had lost the one person who truly understood her. The once fiery, bold woman who had commanded the stage with unshakable confidence faded away. She no longer wanted to sing, no longer wanted to be seen, no longer wanted to exist in the world that had taken everything from her. For years, she lived in near complete isolation, grieving not just for her daughter, but for the life she had never truly been able to hold on to. The world remembers Frida Lyngstad as an icon, a legend, a woman who stood at the top of the pop music world. But her real story was one of struggle, of loss, of endless battles fought behind the curtain. She was born into rejection, fought her way into fame, but lost almost everything along the way. She had been abandoned, betrayed, controlled, and broken. And yet, she endured. Even in her pain, even in the silence she retreated into, the echoes of her voice still remain. The world may have taken so much from her, but the music she left behind, that was hers forever. For decades, fans saw Frida as the bold, fierce, unstoppable performer, the woman who stood alongside ABBA's greatest hits with undeniable energy. But behind that image was a woman who fought battles no one truly understood. Her clashes with Benny, her tensions with Agneta, her personal tragedies. All of it painted a picture of someone who lived a life filled with as much heartbreak as success. Now, with Benny Andersson finally breaking his silence, the world is left to re-examine Frida's story. Was she the victim of circumstance, or a woman whose fiery nature led to her own undoing? Was she misunderstood, or was she just as responsible for the conflicts that surrounded her? One thing is certain: the legend of ABBA will never look the same again.